For decades, the pontoon boat has been a strictly utilitarian platform. It is a mass-market vehicle optimized for passenger density and functional transit on the water, rather than high-end hospitality. The visual language of this baseline is predictable. It relies on bright white fiberglass, standard-issue marine vinyl, and cool-toned LED lighting illuminating forward-facing bench rows. The Jaguar Lounge represents a departure from those expectations. Sitting on dark water under a glowing thatched roof, it establishes a visual dissonance before the user even steps on deck. The project re-engineers the 24-foot hull to function as a floating four-season safari resort. The official style guide explicitly defines the goal through three core attributes: bold, exotic, refined. It categorizes the project not as a boat, but as a luxury floating jungle lodge. To achieve this, designers utilize cognitive schema subversion, the intentional use of environmental cues to override a user's preconceived expectations of a space. Executing this subversion on a 24-foot platform requires three specific vectors: foundational semiotics, spatial restructuring, and environmental orchestration. The designer replaces the psychological schema of the original vehicle to establish a luxury experience on a utilitarian platform. The first vector of transformation focuses on foundational semiotics. This process replaces functional marine materials with terrestrial lodge cues. The material palette swaps standard white marine vinyl for espresso brown and replaces fiberglass decks with faux teak. These textures ground the user's psychology. They signal the permanence of land-based architecture rather than the lightweight feel of a standard watercraft. Introducing bold themes like jungle prints carries a specific risk. Without control, exotic designs often result in a tacky, theme park aesthetic. To solve this, the designers implemented a mathematical constraint. The Jaguar Rosette vinyl is limited to a 5 to 10% accent coverage. Applied in 3D space, the bold pattern never dominates. It is relegated to minor accent zones, such as the lumbar bolsters. This strict limit ensures the exotic theme remains a curated moment of contrast rather than an overwhelming saturation of the space. Notice how a single line of cognac piping bridges the gap between the heavy espresso brown base and the bold Jaguar accents. In experiential architecture, luxury is defined by the disciplined, systemic restriction of exotic materials. The second vector targets the structural layout of the traditional marine floor plan. This overhead overview shows how discrete hospitality zones are mapped directly onto the 24 by 8 foot footprint. The placement of the center fire lounge creates a psychological paradox. It overrides the forward-facing transit mindset by forcing the interaction model inward. In practice, the lounge dictates stillness and conversation at the center of the vessel. The bow section is similarly transformed. What is usually a passenger bench becomes a deep, private architectural retreat. The analysis shifts now to the operational center of the vessel, the midship control area. The traditional captain's helm is visually disguised as a whip-slatted boutique concierge desk and bar. This redesign effectively casts the vessel operator as a hospitality host. These zones redirect the flow of social energy, creating localized gravity wells of interaction. Spatial repurposing anchors the user's attention, shifting the focus from motion toward a sense of dwelling. The third vector is environmental orchestration. Relying exclusively on espresso browns and dark teak creates a heavy, claustrophobic atmosphere on dark water. To counter this, the interior utilizes a strict implementation of 2200 Kelvin warm amber lighting. 2200 Kelvin is the exact color temperature of a natural flame, acting as a psychological anchor across the deck. Matching the interior illumination to the sunset reinforces a constant golden hour mental state, softening the dark tones of the vinyl. Distributing this amber light at the floor level separates the furniture from the deck, creating an illusion of weightlessness. Tiki torches on the upper visual plane validate and reinforce the artificial LED lighting below. This unified lighting strategy successfully ties the entire environment together in motion, highlighting the rich texture of the wood grain. The resulting environment feels sophisticated and timeless. In experiential design, lighting is the atmospheric glue required to harmonize heavy materials and spatial layouts into a single emotional state. Successfully transforming a utilitarian platform into a luxury destination requires total psychological commitment. Vector 1 established the disciplined 5 to 10% constraint of the terrestrial material palette. Vector 2 utilized inward-facing spatial restructuring centered around the fire pit and concierge bar. Vector 3 applied the 2200 Kelvin psychological anchor lighting to tie the environment together. This illusion is fragile. If the designers had used cool white LEDs or applied the Jaguar print at 50% coverage, the cognitive shift would collapse. Experiential architecture is the practice of managing these exact intersecting vectors without compromise. The Jaguar Lounge succeeds because of its relentless adherence to its own internal semiotic logic. The user's perception of value is dictated by this curated environment, severing them from the mechanical reality of the hull. This creates a perfectly isolated luxury environment in nature, where the outside world fades entirely into the darkness. True luxury is not defined by the physical limits of the platform, but by the ability to precisely engineer a self-contained reality upon it.